Production Peru for his initial thoughts and for the plan that they are putting into place.
Thanks very much, Mr. Benjamin. I'm going to start with a few slides talking about Peru's economic reality. First, we were the fastest growing economy in Latin America over the last 12 years or so, pretty much since the beginning of the commodity price boom, right, that lasted from 2011. Highest growth, lower inflation in the region among the mid-sized to large countries. Second, we have very strong fundamentals. We have almost no debt. It's 20%. The gross debt is around 20% of GDP. If we subtract assets, we basically have zero net debt. Over the last couple of years, and partly as a result of the reduction in commodity prices, copper prices, for example, have fallen 55% since 2011, we have seen lower growth. So now we're growing around 3% from a previous average of around 7%. This mostly has been explained by lower traditional exports. Fishing, mining exports have been coming down. This is as a result of lower mineral prices. And non-traditional exports have been stagnated. We have also a high labor informality. Almost 70% of our labor market is in the informal economy, which is striking for an economy with a per capita GDP of $12,000 on a PPP basis, right? It's a very high informal economy within the labor market. We spend very little on R&D. The numbers, the last available numbers are comparable, are from 2010. We have moved up a little bit, but still the R&D spending as a percentage of GDP is around 0.12%, for 15%, certainly much lower than they should be. And we lag in other key determinants of productivity like infrastructure, institutions, human capital. And our exports compared to, let's say, Korea, which is obviously a very high watermark, are not very complex and have not changed much over the last 25 to 30 years. This is where we stand, growing less, with a very strong still macroeconomic fundamentals, but with a much lower growth rate. So what to do looking forward? The country launched, like around a year ago, the National Plan for Product Diversification, basically with 6 main lines of action. The first one is facilitate the emergence of new engines of growth. Second one, the development of innovation centers. Third, implement the national innovation policy. Fourth, the national quality policy. The fifth, develop modern industrial parks. And sixth line of action, the reduction of cost of financing for MSMEs. Right? So I'm going to talk about each of one briefly. Basically, we need to make sure that we have other engines of growth. The mining sector, the agro-industry have been the 2 main engines of growth over the last years. Actually, the mining sector of the last 50 years. Agro-industry is more recent in the last 15 years. And we need to make sure that we have other engines to make sure that the economy goes back to a 7% growth from the previous decade. We have been working on 5 sectoral working committees. The idea of the committees is trying to identify bottlenecks, right, that have been affecting the productivity of the private sector. These committees are working committees, include public sector offices and private sector offices. So we have been very successful, I would say, over the last year. We have 5 working committees, forestry, aquaculture, creative industries, textiles, and more recently gastronomy, which is a huge economic value chain. These are just to see where we are in terms of exports over the last. In forestry, for example, we haven't done anything over the last 15 years, and we compare vis-a-vis our neighbors, right, and let alone China, we haven't done much, despite the fact that we have a huge comparative advantage because a typical tree grows in Peru in 8 years compared to 25 years in Chile, even though Chile exports 40 times more than we do because they go direct together. Well, we have been working on 3 different very years, but the 3 main important things are removing regulation and red tape, more investment in R&D, and actually increase financing, which is important because for this long-term investment, use this long-term financing that wasn't previously available. The government has been working on all these, and we have started to see the first investments in forestry. Aquaculture is somewhat similar. We have been growing a little bit, 25% over the last years, but from a very low base, and 25% from zero is pretty much zero. And that compared to Ecuador, Brazil, Chile, and other countries in the region, and let alone the Asian countries. So in aquaculture, we have a lot to do. We export only 1% of our fishing sector is aquaculture compared to 50% in the world. So we have a lot of room to grow there. Similar to the Forestry Committee, we have been working on R&D, sanitary issues, and red tape. I think that the issues of red tape and bad regulation and poor investment in R&D are very pervasive, and we can see it in all the sectors. But we have been working already there, new laws, new regulation. We feel very comfortable we are doing significant progress there. So I'm going to move to the next line of action. I said we're 6. The second one is innovation centers very quickly here. Basically, we have a few innovation centers, some private, some public in Peru. The public ones have worked very well. The private ones did not work that well because they didn't have any government funding. So since last year, now we have available government funding for private innovation centers. And that's what we're going to have by the end of next year. So basically, we're going to quadruple the level of innovation centers. We're putting innovation centers where we're doing R&D, extensionism, technological transfer, articulation of markets, and divulgation of information. And wherever there is a cluster of MSMEs, we're putting an innovation center because a huge gap between the productivity of the small firms and the productivity of the large firms within the same cluster. So we're trying to, there's a lot of very low-hanging fruit, just using the technology of large firms to buy the smaller firms. This is how it looks, right? We're doing other programs that are in terms of cluster development, supplier development program that I don't have a lot of time to explain, but it's important. The third big line of action is supporting of innovation. As I said earlier, right, we are lagging behind big time in innovation in the country compared to what we used to be. We're working at 2 levels. First, some government initiatives to fund innovation initiatives, where we're multiplying by 15 the amount of money we have being allocated for grants for innovation, startups, etc. And we are also working on a committee to, again, identify the barriers and remove the barriers that have precluded the ecosystem of technological companies to emerge in the country. We are working certainly on fostering venture capital financing and angel investments. A second part of the initiatives for promoting R&D is a new law that we passed earlier this year, and will be working from January 1st to include tax deductions for investment in R&D. Peru never had any fiscal incentives in terms of tax deduction for investment in R&D. We're doing it, and it's a pretty generous one that we expect start to close the huge R&D gap that we have in the country. The fourth, the national quality policy. This is a transversal policy, very horizontal. We launched an official institution called INACAL. It's a national institute for quality. Actually, the ceremony was last week in Peru. The idea is to make sure that the culture of quality it becomes very horizontal, very widespread, utilized in the country. As we can see, there hasn't been enough standardization in the country. Enough products are not being certified by accredited laboratories. So we need to make sure we work on quality, because that's the basis for being able to export, which is one of our main targets. And the fifth line of action here is industrial parks. We are working on a few industrial parks in the country. Basically, Lima and the industry has been set up in Peru in what used to be the periphery of the cities. As the cities grew, the industrial parks or the industrial zones have been in the middle of the cities, right? Which doesn't make any sense. So we are allocating new spaces for industrial parks. Those are our initial ones, where we're going to see basically setting up areas with good infrastructure, communication of the 21st century. Right now, I think we achieve, by promoting industrial parks, we'll be achieving a few objectives. First, obviously, provide a very competitive industrial space for our industries. Right now, a factory, if it wants to set up in Lima, would be paying $1,000 per square meter. Yes, it's extremely expensive. Whereas to be competitive worldwide, you need to be at around $150 to $200 max, right? So we are setting up these spaces. That base is going to increase competitiveness for our industrial areas. Second, is going to allow big cities, particularly Lima, right, to be much better ordered, because it doesn't make sense to have industries, factories, cohabitating with residential and commercial area, right? And that has huge negative effects in terms of contamination, so, and environmentally not sustainable. So we are clearly working on that to move industries away from Lima into outside. In the case of Lima, the park, the Ancón National Park, this is where it is. This is Lima. This is where the industrial park would be located. Very well connected to the port, to the airport. So we are pretty comfortable that the city is going to get, over the next few, we already finishing the master plan, and we expect the beginning of the construction somewhere next year. Overall, the sixth line of action is reducing the cost of financing with guarantees, etc. We know that for development, the funding of SMEs is very important. Funding cost for an MSE in Peru is around 25–30%, which is huge, and we are working on different financial engineering areas to reduce the cost in a very significant way. So those are the 6 lines of action that we are working on our plan, and I think I'm on time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghezzi. You've done a fantastic job. One of the really interesting things, I think, to come out of your plan here is this idea of the greater emphasis on innovation, that, you've said that Peru, in a sense, has lagged this, and that you need to really do a much better job on innovation. And I just want to key in on that a moment, because, of course, this is also one of the goals of the SDG 9s, one of the 3 I's, resilient infrastructure, industrialization, and, of course, innovation. And one of the things I find very interesting here is that your innovation and technology centers, right now, you're going to go from 12, but you're going to triple that, you said, to 35. Quadruple.
48.
To 48, okay. If I ask them again, maybe we can get it up to 60 or something like that. But you're going to quadruple that to 48. And that also, very importantly, they're going to go into clusters. They're going to go into clusters, which is very important. And you also talked about the importance of industrial parks. So there's a lot of thought that's going into this plan. Greatly appreciate you sharing with us. I will come back to you in a few minutes, but what I really want to do right now is to share a video, and this video is from Mr. Andreas von Wiedemeyer-Knigge. He's the president of the National Society for Industry for Peru. Let's listen. Watch the video.